Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. And today what we're going to look at doing is putting a battery to battery charger and an inverter into this Volkswagen Crafter van. So with that being said, I'll show you some of the bits that we've got and how we're going to wire it in. So what I'll start with is just showing you some of the bits that we've got that we're going to be using to fit this into this Crafter van today. So we've got a battery to battery charger. So this is a 12 volt to 12 volt 30 amp Sterling charger. We've got ourselves some positive battery cable, we've got some negative, we've got some other bits of cable here which we can use for the inverter. So we've got a 2000 watt inverter, we've got an auxiliary battery, we've actually got two but I've got another one in the van, so we've got two auxiliary batteries, we've got two battery trays with the clamps to hold all that in place, we've got some of the cable lugs as well so that we can fit these onto the end of the cable. We've got ourselves a resettable fuse to go between the vehicle electrics and the leisure electrics, and then we've got plug sockets as well, because what I'm going to do is mount this in behind the seats and then I'm going to run a wire through into the back of the van and just have a plug socket like that in place. So here we have the front of the van, and this is where I'm going to be installing the secondary batteries or auxiliary batteries into. There's a nice bit under the seat here which I'm going to be using because I can access the actual vehicle electrics from here, because on this Crafter the battery's actually underneath here. So what we'll do is we'll get that battery out, or we'll get access to that battery so we can see all of that in there. We can just pop this seat up. So as you can see in here, we've got these little pockets underneath the seats, and I've just laid one of the battery trays in just to see what that will look like, because obviously I've got to bear in mind that these need to be unobstructed so that the seat can fold back up. What I'm thinking about doing is probably putting one of the batteries underneath the driver's seat, one of the batteries in here, and then I've still got a bit of space for other bits and pieces if I need to. And then as I was saying earlier in the video, what I'm thinking about doing is probably putting the inverter and the smart charger just down behind this seat box. So what I'll do first is I'm going to get this seat out. I'll get this seat out, and then we'll probably look at mocking up where we want that battery tray to go, and the same with the other side before I then try and see if I can take this seat box out itself. So what I'm going to do is get on with that now. So just to give you an idea of what's involved with taking these seats out on these ones, you've got the seat belt which is mounted up in here, but if you just take that Torx bit out here, you can take that one out, and then there's a couple more bolts that hold the seat frame in itself. So I'm going to take those out first. So I've just unplugged the seat belts, so I can now take this out. So there we go, that should make access a little bit easier for us. As I say, what I probably will look at doing is maybe even taking the actual seat box itself out. So we'll look at getting the driver's seat out, and it'll also give me an opportunity to give all round here a nice clean, because it's looking pretty grubby and dirty behind here. So I'll crack on with that seat now. So same again on this side, we've got the seat belt, and then we've got 4 E-drive bits on this one. That's that one, and once again that could do with a really good clean in there, so we can do that, not a problem. But on initial looking at this, I don't think we're going to be able to put the battery in here, because there's a few other bits of cable and wiring, and what looks like the airbag sensor as well maybe is in here. So it may well be that we have to stick with the two down in here that we've got. but we can have a bit of a closer look at that and see what's needed. So I've just come back round to the other side now. I've started giving it a little bit of a hoover out, but as I said earlier, I'll probably end up taking this section out, so I'll give all down here a good clean anyway. So I've just been looking at mocking up where the battery trays might go. I'm thinking about putting one in that sort of location and then similar on this side, but I've just taken this cover off that runs over the wiring. So the idea is that I will probably end up putting some fixings in that cover, so I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to damage any of the wiring depending on where I put the covers, where I put the fittings into that cover. So the battery tray on this one, I'm probably going to look to put something similar around there, and then looking at putting the charger, the battery to battery charger here, and then we'll look at putting the inverter here, and then I'll probably put a hole in or around this area, and then I can mount the 2-gang plug socket that I bought into this side, and then the inverter power will just be on the plug socket the other side of this bulkhead here. So what I'm going to do next is probably take this out, give all of this lot a good clean, and then I can mock up where I want those items to fit on the back, and I'll be able to show you a bit better then, rather than trying to do it in here, so that I can't really show you what I'm doing down the back here because of the camera angle. So I'll look at taking this box out now, and then we can mock that stuff up. So I've just undone the bolts that hold the seat base in. So we've got one down here, a couple that run in along here, and then some more that run in down here, which you can just see just there. And then all you've got to do is just unclip this cable, which runs up along here and then back down. You don't actually have to unplug anything, it just runs up through the seat base into the other side there. So that's now loose, so I'm going to take that out. And now, as you can see, with that all out of the way, I can give all of that a really good clean, because it certainly needs it, and give all up here a clean as well. And then we can look at taking these bits and pieces out of the way, moving those tools, bits and bobs, and getting to the battery, which is just underneath this rubber matting, as I mentioned earlier. So we're just giving everything a good clean in here and a wipe down. It's come up a bit better. I'm not looking to get it perfect because it is all behind the seats and stuff, but generally it's pretty good. So what we'll look at doing now is moving over to the seat box, where I've just laid the inverter and the battery charger in place, just to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. So we've now just got these mocked up in place, so we're looking at roughly putting this Sterling battery charger on this side here, and then what we can do with the connections coming out of here, we can drill some holes in the bottom which will go through into where the battery is, and then we're looking at doing similar for the inverter, which we've put on this side. So what we're going to do is we will mark out the points on here, drill through, and then we can nut and bolt this one in place. We use some self-tapping screws for this one, and then, as I said a minute ago, we'll just look at drilling those holes through into position there. So we now got both of those mounted on the back of the seat base there. So what we can look at doing next is we're going to drill out a couple of holes here and here, so that the power and the earth for the inverter can go down through here, and then also the wiring for here. So if I just pop the front off, I'll just grab the camera just to give you a closer look. So as you can see, we've got our power going in, power coming out, which will need to go back through, and obviously the power coming from the battery will need to come back through into here as well. And then we've got the earth, which will go back through onto one of the batteries, and we've also got things here like the ignition, battery temperature and stuff like that, which I'm not going to look to wire these in at the moment. I'm just going to look to get this bit done first. We may look at doing those later. It may well be that we need an ignition one anyway, which we can look at doing for just might be that the charger needs waking up, so it needs to see ignition so that it can charge, but we can look at doing that in a bit. So I think the next thing is, as I say, we'll drill some holes down here so that we can feed the wires in and out, and then we can look at wiring this stuff in before we then put this base back in place. So I think that's what we'll get on with. So I'm just feeding these through in here and just putting rubber grommets in, just so that if any of these wires move at any point, they just don't chafe on any of these sharp metal edges and risk damaging them. So we'll just screw these on now. Only got to be hand tight. And again, just the same with that one. And those wires are through here, so they'll then go onto the battery, so we can look at cutting maybe 1 or 2 more holes here. And then we also need to put there's a little earth on here, which we'll just tuck through this as well. So as you can see, I've already crimped the ends of this one. So I did another video on all these type of electrical connectors and how to fit them and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description for that video. If you want to go on to that, that's got some helpful tips about how to crimp these and all the different types of connections you can use and some of the benefits and drawbacks to those. Just feed that one through as well. Tuck that up under there, that just hold that out of the way. Just to nip that up like that. So as you can see, we've just done 2 more holes. It might be that we don't need an extra hole, but anyway, I've put one there because I think it will be easier. There's going to be less pressure on the wires trying to push them through. So what I'm going to look at doing now is feeding some of these wires into this here and doing these up, just because I think once it's in place it's going to be that bit more difficult to see and be able to do as well. So that's what I'm going to look at, putting those wires in now. I've got an eyelet on one end which will go onto the battery, and then the other end, what I've done is I've just chopped the eyelet off and just taken some of the outer sheathing off. So I'm just going to tuck that through as we did with the other ones, and then just bring that round into the negative. What you want to do with this as well is just make sure that none of these copper wires are poking out when you fit this, and you want to make sure that this outer sheathing is right up against this as well, just right up tight like that. As you can see, there's no copper showing there, it's nice and tight. So then once you've got it in place, just hold it in, just do that up nice and tight, and give that wire a pull. That's not going anywhere, which is great. So we then got the negative here. As you can see, that then pops back round up there. So we can look to do the same for the positive as well. I'll probably put that through here just so that there's no chance of them ever rubbing together. And then obviously we've got the positive coming in and the positive going out. So for the moment I'll probably just do the in one, so that then we can wire that up to the battery in the van, and then we can in situ look at running it the other way, so I don't cut the cable too short or miles too long. We can get it fitting quite nice. So again, hook that up through there. That just wants to be right up close again as well. There we go. Tuck that back through. And then once we've got the third wire in place as well, we can cable ties these together and make them look neat. So that's not a problem. So I'm just going to have a quick look around, and then I think the next thing will be maybe to put this base back in place, and then see about, as I said, wiring some of these bits in, and then looking at where we're going to put the batteries on inside this base. So I'm just going to go and have a quick look at that. So I've now just popped the seat base back in, doing all those bolts back up. I've put some of the wiring back in place, that's the vehicle wiring. I haven't pushed these little clips back in yet because I want to move them around. I might cut these bolts off later. I have left them just in case I need them as an earth point. I will end up trimming these self-tappers, or at least just grinding the heads so that they're not sharp edges, because if I catch myself at a later date on those, I probably won't be too impressed. But this is why I think it was a better idea just to take this box out and wire it in as much as we can sort of out of the vehicle, because as you can see we can't see a great deal and it's quite a challenge. But as I showed you earlier, it's cleaned up pretty nice down there. These will be out of the way and then all protected. And then what I'm going to do is I'll put a plug top in there, and then that can just go through into the double socket as we mentioned earlier. So what I'm going to look at doing now is just probably laying those battery trays in, getting an idea of where I roughly want those. I know I did earlier, but I'll just put those back in, access the vehicle battery, and then we can look at where we want to put this red wire, because obviously we need that fuse as well. So we'll probably mount the fuse on the other side of this with the splice in it for the fuse to go in line. So I'll pop all this out the way and we can have a look at the battery. So just to give you an idea of how to get this out, there's a little sort of plastic cover for here, and there's just a piece in there that you just twist that pin and that pops that out. Then you've got 3 little screws and all of this stuff lifts out. That's just an extra mat that I bought for the van, and I've just folded that out of the way. So I've just fed the wire down through to the battery now. So we've got this piece here which goes down to the battery on the vehicle, which is going to be the positive from the vehicle battery through to the fuse that we're going to put in line, and then this one goes off to the Sterling charger. So I've just cut these back, taken a bit of the outer sheathing off, and then all that you do is just pop that little rubber out, slide these in like that. This will then go over, just create a watertight seal. So I'm just going to pull that over. I'd already got these wires stripped, otherwise I would just recommend trying to push these down while the outer wiring's already on there. So then that is just going to go in here like that with that Allen key. So I'll grab an Allen key. Just like that, and then we'll do the same for the other side. So as you can see, we've now just popped that in place, and that's one of the resettable type fuses. So these are all on and tight now. Inside we've done all of that up, and we've just put 2 self-tapping screws in there just to hold it in place. We've run the wiring neatly down through into the other side where the battery goes, and then here we've run this neatly. And as I said earlier, we can look to tie all this sort of stuff up and make this look neat once we finish, but we just want to get most of the stuff in place first before we start tying the wires up out the way. So what I might do now is feed the wire through to the Sterling charger, which is going to come out to the auxiliary battery. So I'll probably get on with that next. I've got a rough mock-up here of how long I need the battery lead on this side, so I can cut that. So I've just jumped ahead a little bit here. If I take this back off, I can just show you. I've fitted one of the lug ends on. I've crimped that in place onto that wire, and then just put a bit of heat shrink on there. I didn't have any red colour left, so that'll do perfectly fine. And that comes into here as we showed earlier, and then I've just run that down to there, and then this wire I've just put in to the battery charger, and that one goes up to the leisure battery. So I've just marked 4 points on here for where I want the battery tray to go, and then what I'm going to look at doing next is just drilling those out, and then I'm going to put these riv style nuts in there. One thing you do need to consider as well when you're drilling in and around these areas is just what may be lying underneath. So like with this, we took this off and looked at the cables, but also I've taken this rubber bung out. As you can see, when my finger goes in just through here, the fuel tank isn't far away at all. It's probably inch and a half at best. So when we're drilling through here, we just need to be really careful that we don't plunge the drill straight into the fuel tank there. So what you can do is you can put a drill stop on the end of your drill bit. I don't have any that are big enough to fit this size, so I'm just going to go really carefully and just not push this drill too hard through this drill through the hole that I'm drilling, so that I don't damage the fuel tank on the other side. So as you can see, I've done the first hole now. I'm just working my way through the second here, just going nice and slow. So there you go, just literally pop the drill just through enough to finish that hole off. I can see, well, I can see there's daylight there anyway, so, but you still want to be very careful as you go. So these will just knock into here, and we can do those up. We might need to go slightly bigger, just so that we can get those through. So I look at drilling these two holes. I might take this panel off out of the way, put it in a vise, drill them and come back to that. So this is where we're up to now. We've got the earth for the inverter and the earth for the battery charger onto the neutral of the battery, and then we've got the same on this side. We've got the positive, which is coming out of the battery charger, and the positive for the inverter. I've had to modify the battery clamp slightly because the threaded clamp bits that hold it on aren't tall enough for this battery. So what I've done is I've just drilled some holes further down, and I've just widened the top of the battery section here, so that instead of it sitting on here, it just sits in there, and that's fine. This is rock solid, it's not going anywhere, and it's also allowed me to tie the cables up there. So I've just tied them in place like that for the moment, because we've got the other battery which we want to put on here, and then this piece here that we've got, that goes onto one of the bolts which hold the seat in. That's just the earth for the inverter. So what we can do now as well, just pop the inverter on, and we have actually got a green light on the inverter. You can't quite see. If you turn it off, you get that little noise where it's just turning off. So I imagine the battery charger will probably need to put an ignition feed to it, as I said earlier in the video. So for the moment, I'm just going to leave that like that. I'm going to pop the driver's seat back in and finish off for today, and then what I'll do is I'll recap back, and then we'll get the other battery tray back in, get it linked into there, get the ignition feed on there, and then put all the rest of this stuff back as well. So hey guys, welcome back. So it's the next day on the Crafter, and what I've managed to do is just wire in this wire here into the ignition wake up for the charger. So what I do is I put a still photo on the screen now so you can see that, because as I showed you earlier in the video, it's all quite a tight squeeze in there. So I'll pop that on the screen so you can see that. And then what we're going to look at doing is we're going to feed this wiring underneath, under the battery, and then through to the driver's seat. And then what we'll be able to do, we should be able to pick up an ignition feed, because there's a fuse box in there. So I'll just turn the camera around. So from yesterday, this is where we finished up. So what I've done now is I've just run that small wire down, as I say, down from here into here, down in there, and then I'm going to go along here, which goes under the seat base, under the carpet or matting, and then under this seat. So I'll pop this seat back out, and then we should be able to see if we can pick something up from there. So I'll just pop that out now. So just down here, I've now fed a line from over the other side. So I just use this cable puller that I use for household electrics. So I just pull that up, take my bit of wire on there, and then pull that back through. So I just use some electrical tape. So now what we've done is we've pulled the wire through into here, and then we just chopped off the end that we were pulling through with, just so that we can now get the cable puller out of the way. So the next bit is just a case of looking into the back of the fuse board here, or to this relay or this one, and just seeing if we've got an ignition feed, so that then we can pick up the ignition with this wire down to the battery charger by using some of this. So I've just got the positive terminal into the back of one of these wire points. There's not actually a fuse in this one. if I just pop that onto the negative or an earth point, I'm just going to switch the ignition on. As you can see, we've now got battery voltage. Then if I turn that back off, we then got no voltage, so we can use that wire there, so that's perfect. So that's the black with a pink trace in there, and as I say, there's not actually a fuse in there, so that'll work well for us. So what I'm going to do is just cut into that, and then I'll put one of those solder sticks in. As I said earlier, I'll leave a link in the description for the video where I showed some of those, so you can get an idea of how to fit them. So that's what I'm going to do next, and pop that in. So you should now just be able to see at the top of the screen there, I've just spliced into that wire here, and then what I've done, if I zoom back out, is I've just neatly put the wiring in along here with some of the wiring tape, just so it looks sort of semi-factory. So now what we do, we spin the camera around, we'll have a look at the battery, we'll start the van up, and we'll check that it's charging. So I'm just going to pop the I've started the engine. We'll just pop that onto the vehicle earth and then onto the battery as well, and you should be able to see here, just tuck that in there, see that? Now we're just getting caught slightly by the sun. That's it, we got our 14.2 volts, so we know that we're charging, so that's great. So just before I jump too far forward and put the seats back in, I was just going to show you what I've done with the inverter. So I've just put a plug top on there with a bit of flex, and then what I'm going to do is get one of those sticky pads and then a cable tie, and just cable tie that over in place there. So then, as you can see there, I've just put the wiring through, and then I've just put the back box onto the bulkhead itself, and then I'm just going to screw that up in place just like that. I've now just popped the seat back in. As you can see, that's all in place. So we got the battery in there, and then at the moment I'm probably just going to leave this one for the minute and see how I get on, but if I need to, I can just put the other battery tray in here just like I've done with this one, and then I can just run some leads from this battery and put something through here, some similar holes like we did on the back, and then just get the cables through. So we'll just give the seat a quick test fit. There you go, as you can see, that all pushes back into place nicely, which is good. So that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you found it useful. We've managed to get the inverter wired in, the smart battery to battery charger wired in, we've got some plug sockets in the back here, we've got an auxiliary battery, we've wired everything into the vehicle with the ignition feed as well, we've tested it all, and we've put it in a nice neat location out of the way, so there's no chance of it getting damaged and no chance of it being seen either. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. We'll see you on the next one.